What is color photography? Color photography is a style of photography which often incorporates vivid colors, bold and contrasting color combinations, or even selecting one color and using only that color throughout the image. Hi guys, my name is Tori, and in this video, we're going to talk about color photography and how to use color effectively in your images. Let's get into it. Some examples of color photography are colorful still lifes, color contrast photography, selective color photography, and analogous color photography. I want to explore why these styles of photography are so captivating and how you can play around and create with color yourself. A good place to start is with color theory and color psychology. Color theory is a group of guidelines that are often used in art to communicate with color through visual mediums. You've probably heard of primary and secondary colors. These are the colors that make up the color wheel. Red, yellow, and blue being our primary colors, and orange, green, and purple are our secondary colors. Create color harmony by choosing monochrome, complementary, or analogous color palette as a basis for your image. These are some examples of images that have used monochrome, complementary, and analogous color palettes to create visual interest and to tell a story within the image. These colors also have emotions and connotations attached to them. I'm sure you've heard of red being associated with passion, or yellow with happy, and blue with sadness or cold. These are guidelines to keep in mind when choosing a color palette for your image, so that you can control how the audience will view the photo and the emotions they might feel. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to color photography, and there's different ways to make the colors in your images pop. Color contrast photography is a method of using two contrasting colors on the color wheel. For example, this image uses purple and yellow, a primary and secondary color that are opposites on the color wheel, to let the yellow bottles pop off the background and become the hero of the image. Selective color photography, or color splash, is a style of photography that isolates one color in an image and desaturates all of the colors in the photo. This technique is popular among street photographers to highlight subjects in busy images such as cityscapes, and can be particularly effective in low contrast images to guide the viewer's eye to the focal point of the image. You don't necessarily need a lot of specific equipment to create colorful images. However, this is what I generally use. You'll need a camera. I'm using the Nikon Z6 body, an all-rounder lens. This one's a Nikon 24-100mm. I also like to use a laptop and tether cable when I'm working in the studio so I can quickly review my images as I shoot them. You'll also need a subject to work with. Do you have a colourful vase in green and blue hues that you can't stop looking at? Or perhaps the hot dog you ordered for lunch is calling to you with its red and yellow condiments. Or maybe there's some pink flowers in your backyard that always catch your eye. Choose the subject with colours that you like and find appealing, and this will give you a baseline to start creating a colour palette around. There are some other color combinations that will universally work together and create color harmony. For example, these images are all examples of color combinations that work together to create visual interest. You can see in the purple image, the blue and pink tones are supporting the colors and creating an analogous color palette. In the sandwich image, the pink and green tones mimic the colors in the sandwich and are contrasting colors on the color wheel, creating a complementary color palette. Using these guides as a starting point for your images can allow you to build upon and experiment with different color groupings as you get comfortable working with color. Let's say you choose a purple flower. If you're looking to create a complementary color image, you might pick a yellow vase. Or if you prefer an analogous color palette, you might choose a blue or magenta vase or a backdrop. Working with objects around the home is a great way to practice using color theory and playing around with different color combinations. This way you can find what colors you like working with and how you can incorporate them into your photography style. Color temperature, or white balance, is how warm or cool the overall tone of your image is. It's super important to keep a neutral white balance when working with vibrant colors in your photography, as you really want the colors to show up accurately in the image and not lean too warm or too cool. To achieve this, it's useful to have a grey card handy, which is a piece of card with a neutral grey tone, to place into your frame before you actually take the final photo. I actually use a paint chip for my grey tone. You can also adjust the white balance and color temperature in post-production with Adobe Photoshop and Lightroom. You can sample the grey card color in Lightroom using the dropper tool, and this will set the white balance to neutral. Beyond white balance, there are a lot of ways to make your colors pop more in post-production using Adobe Lightroom. Color grading is your friend when it comes to post-processing your colorful images. In Lightroom, you can isolate each color and control the saturation, adjust the hue, and also the luminance. This can be helpful if you're looking to achieve color accuracy, but you can also get creative by changing and adjusting the colors in post-production. To do this, you can use a HSL panel in Lightroom. Click the color drop-down menu in the Edit panel and use the sliders on each setting to adjust your chosen color. Another tool I often use is the color grading panel. This tool allows you to add color into your images through the shadows, midtones, and highlights, and is a great way to play around with color combinations in the post-production process. Move the center circle of each wheel to your desired color and adjust the blending and balance of the 3 wheels to suit your image's overall look. You can get some really cool effects using these techniques. If you're ever stuck or just not sure what colors will work together, I love using Adobe Color. It's such a fun and useful tool when I'm planning images and color palettes. One of my favorite features is using the Extract Theme tab. I simply import any image, picture, or screenshot, and then extract a custom color palette from that image, which I can use as a reference or jumping off point for my own images. Check out the link in the description for Adobe Color. I highly recommend checking it out. When working with colorful backdrops, I find having a smooth and even-toned background in your image can really elevate the composition and create a more polished look. A technique I find useful to help with this is using the Color Range tool to isolate your backdrop color and smooth it out using the brush tool. Open your image in Lightroom and make your base adjustments using the tools in the adjustment panels. Right-click on the image you'd like to use in the film strip and select Edit in Adobe Photoshop. Once your image has loaded in Photoshop, right-click and select Duplicate Layer. This will allow you to be non-destructive and always have an original to revert back to in Photoshop. From there, go to the top menu bar and click Select and then Color Range. Select the dropper tool and click around the background color of your image. In my case, this is the bright orange around the shopping cart. To refine the selection, slide the fuzziness slider to the right to increase and decrease the tolerance of the selection until the whole of the background is selected. Click OK. You should have your background color selected. Feel free to clean up any areas of your subject that may have been selected by using the lasso tool. Create a new layer by clicking the plus sign in the bottom right-hand corner of the window. Make sure it is above your image layer. This is the layer we will be brushing the background color onto. Select the brush tool and hold down I to sample your background color. Then simply brush over the background selection to create one seamless color. With these steps, you can effectively smooth out a solid color background in Photoshop, resulting in a more polished and professional looking image. Working with color takes a bit of practice and a lot of trial and error. So get out and start practicing color photography, and make sure you try different color combinations to find which ones you like best and help tell your creative story.